This week on World Traveler Cooking, we're going to make paneer, also sometimes called farmer cheese. And this is used, of course, in Indian cuisine, but very similar cheeses, in fact identical cheeses, are used in Lithuanian cuisine and others. This is a nice, non-melting cheese, which can be used, for example, in curries in Indian cuisine, or as the basis for a stuffing for cepelini in Lithuanian cuisine, or many other things. So it's a really versatile dish, as a really versatile cheese, and so it's also really simple to make. So I think I'm going to consider this a part of my fundamentals series, as well as being part of the Indian and Lithuanian cuisine set. So the ingredients I'm using today are very simple. I only have two of them. I have 5 liters of farm fresh raw milk. And the fresher you can get it is better. Any milk, in fact, will work, but like ultra-high pasteurized milk will require more vinegar, and that may affect the taste. So I'm going to use apple cider vinegar. Now, in some cases, like in many cases with Lithuanian cuisine, they'll also add yogurt. You can in fact make this just adding yogurt, because the acids in the yogurt will also curdle the milk. But that also leads to a more sour cheese. So your choice, you can add yogurt. Some people, as far as Indian versions, will sometimes use lemon juice, but vinegar is sort of the typical one around the world. That's all I have for ingredients. I'm going to set this milk on to boil, and basically the first step is boiling the milk. So I set this on to slowly boil. Now we're doing a really basic version today. So some of the more advanced versions, particularly found in Lithuanian cuisine, we're not going to worry about. I recommend making the basic version first, so you get a sense of how the milk works. A couple points to note: the more processed the milk is, the harder it will be to curdle. Since we're boiling the milk first, pasteurization doesn't affect safety, right? We're going to kill any bacteria in the milk as we boil it. So if you can get farm fresh raw milk, that's really best for this. And I'm using 5 liters here, which is quite a lot. So I assume I'm going to end up with quite a bit of cheese. Since this is raw, I assume it has not been homogenized, which should also help with the separation. Again, if this were like ultra-high pasteurized homogenized milk, it would probably require quite a lot of vinegar, and then you'd probably actually need to rinse it. I'll talk about that later. I'm not going to rinse the cheese this time because I just don't think it's going to need it. So we'll be back once this starts to boil, and we'll go from there. Now, the milk is getting pretty hot. You may need to stir it. Especially if you use a fattier milk, like maybe a buffalo milk, you definitely want to stir it. But we're getting closer here. And I'm guessing in maybe 10-15 minutes, or even less, we'll be ready to add the vinegar. It should be noted here that in some of the other versions, you might already add some sour cream or some whisked eggs to this mixture here. But again, for this basic version, we're just going to wait for this to simmer, and then we'll add we will add the vinegar. So if I wait until it really boils hard, I'm almost certainly going to be getting a lot of froth, and it will probably boil over. So I'm just waiting here for basically it's just starting to boil now. I can see bubbles starting to come up regularly. So I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds. I'm going to turn the heat down. Been on kind of a medium heat now I'm turning down to a low heat. And I'm going to start by stirring in about a tablespoon, I can just eyeball it, of vinegar. And I don't really expect that a tablespoon's going to do it. So I'm going to add another tablespoon, and basically I'm just going to add a little bit at a time, waiting for it to really curdle. And I'm expecting it to take about 4 tablespoons, but again, it very much depends on your freshness of your milk. It might take more. If it takes more than about 6, then I'll probably think about rinsing the cheese. If it takes less than that, then I'll think about it. Looks like it's just starting. I'm going to let it come to a boil again, see what happens. And I might have to add a little more. Oh yeah, look at that starting. Definitely starting. Here I'm just going to keep that up. Once it's really curdling well, then I'll come back. I'll tell you how much I've used. So I've added about 6 tablespoons, and you're going to see this is curdling really well. And what you're also going to notice is that the whey is now pretty clear. It's not perfectly clear, but it's pretty clear. So as I continue to simmer this for a little longer, the whey is actually going to clear up a little bit, and the curd, the stuff, is going to continue to harden a little bit. You see that sort of yellow translucent color there? That's what we want. So we're going to let this kind of simmer for about another few minutes, and then we'll be ready to start the straining process. Okay, so this was starting to boil, and so I've taken it off. Now we're going to go ahead and start the straining process. So I'm going to take it over near the sink or somewhere where I can manage things, and we'll strain it through a cloth. By the way, I've gone ahead and also tasted the whey. Despite the fact that I've added vinegar, this is still a very sweet whey, so you can just save the whey and drink it. It's really easily digestible, so also, like, you know, if somebody's sick, it's like a perfect way of getting protein and stuff. Whey protein is one of the easiest proteins to digest, while this protein here is much, this casein protein is much harder to digest. But that's also nice because it keeps you fuller longer. So, let's go ahead and get this started. So, I decided to just do the straining here by the stove. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this muslin cloth and pile in a certain amount of curd onto it. And I'll drain the whey. I think I can add a little more and still have this closed at the end. I have several of these little cloths things here. So basically going to shake it. Then I'm going to fold the corners in. And these are then going to get folded over and basically set to be pressed. So I'm going to put these in a some sort of a container where I can press them from on top. So now I have these 3 done with the paneer, and so I'm going to put a weight on top, and I think I can add maybe another weight on top of that, And we're just going to let this sit for several hours, and then we'll be back for a taste test. So it's been a few hours. I'm going to let this go for longer, but I think we're ready for a taste test. You can see the cheese here has become spongy and relatively firm. So I'm just going to cut a little bit off for a taste test. Obviously, this is not a dish that you would normally serve by itself. And even like with Lithuanian cuisine, typically they would use a version of this that would, for example, have caraway seeds in it. So I'm just going to take a little piece of this for a taste test. And I will I'll get myself a mug of whey. And now for the taste test. I'm going to taste just a little bit of this cheese to start with. Yeah, that tastes like paneer. It's a little bit sweet, very rich. You kind of get the full fat aspect of it. Because we didn't use too much vinegar, even without rinsing it, I don't taste any vinegar. Now I'm going to taste the whey. So whey is a really wonderful thing to have. Like, for example, if you're not feeling well, it's real easy to digest. This whey, even though we added vinegar to curdle the milk, the whey is still very sweet because most of the lactose is still in the whey. This is, of course, used in some very old alcoholic beverages, fermenting the lactose into alcohol. Never tried that. Might try it again. Might try it at some point, but not trying it yet. The whey itself doesn't have a lot of flavor, but it is sweet. And it has a richness, and as I say, the proteins digest really fast and really easily. So, if you find this content interesting, I hope I've earned a like and a subscription from you. Please feel free to check out my Patreon page if you'd like to support my work. My patrons get early access to many of my videos. And if you make this dish and you make it differently than I do, I'd love to hear how you do it differently. We very oftentimes can learn from sharing cooking techniques. So I do plan on making a more complicated version with eggs and sour cream and caraway seeds later. But for a very basic farmer's cheese or paneer, this is definitely the way to go. At any rate, recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.